Wajibadando bimbera, bimbera, wajibadando bimbera, wajibadando bimbera. Welcome to this episode on Healing Through Stories with me, Dixon Chibanda. Today I will be going through excerpts from my upcoming book, The Friendship Bench, How 14 Grandmothers Inspired a Mental Health Revolution. Let's start. The book talks about the beginning of Friendship Bench and how the 14 grandmothers came together and how we initiated the first activities around the Friendship Bench and what we've learned over the past 15 years. So I will read some sections from the book. I will not be reading extensively, but the book is available for pre-order on Amazon. I will start from page 44 simply because I want to focus on the actual grandmothers. The book does touch on the idea of Friendship Bench, how it was conceived. The book also talks about the different parts of the world where we have piloted Friendship Bench, the travels linked to Friendship Bench. But today I want to emphasize the 14 grandmothers and how they helped shape this initiative right from its inception. So I'm starting from page 44, at the bottom of page 44 of the book, and it says, I was immediately struck by the wisdom of the 14 grandmothers. Altogether, if you were to add up their ages, they were proprietors of a collective treasury of more than 1,000 years worth of experience. I quickly learned from them that mental health was simply an entry point into storytelling, a timeless communal tool that had been forgotten by many Zimbabweans, but that had the potential to transform individuals, families, and communities who had borne the brunt of the damage. When I talk about damage in this book, I'm referring to Operation Murambatsvina, which is explained later on. It was a cleanup campaign which was driven primarily by the armed forces, the police, under Robert Mugabe's government. So I'm going to carry on from where I left off. These grandmothers showed me that there were many ways of unpacking cognitive behavioral therapy. When we started, it did not occur to me that for our work to succeed, we had to be authentically immersed in the local culture. We had to create an indigenous cognitive behavioral therapy approach that would not alienate us from the community. Traditionally, CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is based on the link between our thoughts, feelings, and behavior, how they are all interconnected and influence our outlook on life, with a particular focus on bringing our distorted thoughts more in line with reality. The grandmothers, through decades of lived experience, had developed an internal compass, a culturally rooted system to navigate through the emotional and psychological issues presented to them. A higher level of psychological consciousness, if you like. They possessed an ability to intuitively see the link between feelings, thoughts, moods, and behavior, and to apply this intuitive ability in their problem-solving therapy. They also understood that a shift would come through breaking the cycle of negative thoughts and feelings at the behavior level by scheduling activities such as gardening or going to the local community clubs that would lead to positive, rewarding behavior. While they were never trained to be professional CBT therapists, they inherently grasped the fundamental building blocks of CBT, that link between positive activity and improved mental well-being. Of course, By their nature, grandmothers are firm in their hard-earned knowledge and have strong convictions that can make them stubborn and at times difficult to work with. I'd now like to go into Grandmother Jack, just to highlight some of the challenges that I faced working with Grandmother Jack and how, looking back, I truly appreciate her stubbornness in a way. So I'm starting from page 46, where it starts with the most difficult of the 14 grandmothers by far was Grandmother Jack, a headstrong and combative 82-year-old who wore her signature red beret everywhere. She'd lived in Bare all her life and had many insights to share. Although I initially found some of her ways of communicating these insights to be irksome and even hostile, she would prove to be a powerful thought leader who had the tenacity of a revolutionary thinker. In some ways, she would be my greatest teacher as I transitioned from hospital-based to community-based mental health care. I need to read this piece. It's very small, but it's really important as it helps to put things into context. It says, psychiatry, like any other science, is anchored in empirical observation using proven tools that are routinely accepted in the trade. The problem, according to the grandmothers, was one that many post-colonial scholars and other contemporary thinkers are familiar with. What exactly was empirical observation and who was defining it? I'll stop there. Everything that I've just shared is a reflection of the grandmothers and how they see the world. But I think the most profound statement for me personally in this excerpt is that last sentence, which says, what exactly was empirical observation and who was defining it? When you think of global mental health and the frameworks that we use to navigate the global mental health space, it's really based on research and thinking that is rooted in Western institutions. And these 14 grandmothers, when we were starting Friendship Bench, were questioning all of that, which to me didn't initially make a lot of sense. But as I continue to work with them, I realized the true value of immersing oneself in the culture and the local ways of thinking and understanding mental health, particularly how you navigate emotional, psychological issues. So very important, that statement, who is defining what we call empirical observation? And unfortunately, in a lot of global mental health circles, that definition is often owned by clinicians, by academics. I want to just touch on something related to that, which is in the book. And as a result of that, I go on to say on page 48, when I begin to have better comprehension of what the grandmothers were up to. On page 48, I start the sentence by saying, what the grandmothers helped me to see and what I eventually began to appreciate was that these skills had existed within the cultures of Zimbabwe and many other African countries since time immemorial. And by these skills, I'm referring to the ability to connect with human beings, the ability to actually engage in a therapeutic process, which is very similar to what we traditionally refer to as cognitive behavioral therapy in our Western models of thinking. Oral storytelling has always been an important aspect of our spiritual and secular lives. To this day, I remember sitting with my own grandmother around a fire, listening with rapt attention as she told a story, usually a fable about animals engaged in different activities that eventually culminated in a fundamental lesson about the power of community. So this book is really about community and how community can get together. And the grandmothers are creating that space for community to appreciate the need for cohesion, because through that cohesion you connect, and through those connections a sense of belonging is created. So the name of my book is The Friendship Bench: How 14 Grandmothers Inspired a Mental Health Revolution. And one reason I decided to write this book, other than the fact that many of my colleagues and friends have urged me to tell my story for years, is that I want people to understand the powerful ways in which communities of individuals can make an impact by reaching out and connecting, especially across the intergenerational divide. Although many of us are in the practice of outsourcing our well-being and physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual care to institutions, such a tactic is not sustainable because it's couched in a transactional and inherently limiting model. As human beings, we are relational. We relate to one another through shared stories and experiences. The value of a genuine smile, a warm embrace, collective laughter, and a kind word cannot be underestimated, especially in an era when our lives are becoming increasingly automated, automized, and disconnected from nature. I just want to conclude about the reason why I think my book is important by sharing this last paragraph. In the preface. And it starts with, every powerful movement in the history of the world has required people who are willing to gather around the proverbial campfire and generously share their time and energy with one another. So with that, I invite you to sit down and make yourself at home. As you learn the story of the Friendship Bench, may you always remember that every one of us carries a powerful seed that is meant to grow and be shared for the betterment of our community and the world. I hope that my story of the Friendship Bench and those of the brave women who were part of the creation of the Friendship Bench inspire you to do what you can to nurture your own seed so that it too may grow and flourish, so that the fruits of your efforts can be generously shared with others. My sincere wish is that all of us come to the understanding that while pain may be inevitable on this planet, so is healing. And somewhere in the world, there is a grandmother on a bench, beckoning you over with a welcoming smile, urging you to sit down, take a load off, and share what's in your mind and heart. There are numerous stories in the Friendship Bench book that I have shared right from the beginning all the way through to where we are today. If you have a question, a very specific question that you would want to ask about Friendship Bench during the last 15 years, it can be a research-related question, it can be a question about the grandmothers, a question about the clients, a question about our data. Feel free to reach out, and we will do as best we can to respond to your question. Reach out on our email on podcast@friendshipbench.org, or visit my website, dixonchibanda.com, and follow me on my social media platforms.